All right, mate, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. It's time to react to my Premier League predictions for the 22-23 season. It's been a crazy season. It always is, isn't it? Every single year we say the same thing. But the question is, how did I do in terms of accurately placing the teams in the right position? Of course, we keep the data for every single time I've done this. Many years I've been doing this for now. So we can actually compare year on year if I've had a good year or a bad year, statistically speaking. I'm also going to do something I haven't done before in this video. I'm going to be awarding a team of the season. And by that, I mean the club of the season, not a starting 11, the club that I think's been good, and also a manager of the season. I'm going to do that at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. Spoiler alert, I can reveal records have been broken in this season in terms of my predictions. Wait to see what sort of records they are. Let's crack on, starting at the bottom of the table and moving our way up. Right, let's start off with the relegation zone. How many of the 3 teams destined for Championship football did I get right? One of them. It was Leeds. I had Leeds to go down. I had them finishing 18th. They actually finished 19th in the end. But I saw that coming. I'm happy with that. Not happy for Leeds, of course. It's a very sad day. But I didn't see Leicester or Southampton going down. I think I've actually predicted Southampton to go down a couple other seasons. And this was a year I let them off. And lo and behold, they go down. Obviously, they were relegated a long time ago. Crazy game with Liverpool yesterday. It always seems to be the case on these games that don't mean anything. You get these amazing finishes. But Southampton's season was a poor one. Even though I think they've got an exciting young squad, I think they made a bad managerial appointment with getting Jones in. And I also think the second appointment after that was equally as bad. They didn't look like they had the ambition to stay up. But I think that group of players could be very good one day. As for Leicester, really sad to see them leave the Premier League. Of course, they won it not too long ago. That means there's 2 teams now not in the Premier League that have won it, in Blackburn and Leicester, which is a bit weird if you think about it, when there's so many teams that have been in the league forever and not won it, like Everton, who did stay up on the final day. But yeah, sad to see the Foxes go down. I had Fulham and Bournemouth to go down, right? We'll talk about them when we get to where they did finish, but unbelievable season for both clubs. I think this is the first season in a long time that none of the teams going down are teams that got promoted. You know, usually you see at least one promoted team go down, but it's not. No one this year has returned to the Championship. So with Bournemouth, I was 5 places out. Okay, I had them finishing dead bottom. And by the way, shout out to Bournemouth. They made a great video basically mugging me and every other creator off who predicted them to go down. They released it once they had sort of confirmed survival. And I shared it as well because I think it's great. It's what football's all about. When I make these predictions, guys, I'm not saying I'm certain and this is definitely going to happen. So this is what I'm thinking right now. And of course, I'm going to be wrong more times than I'm right, especially in a 20-team table. But it's what football is about when a team like Bournemouth can just surprise you. You know, the managerial job that O'Neill has done, considering he filled in from Scott Parker when he left. The players I didn't think were Premier League quality, and I've been proved wrong. So shout out to Bournemouth. I was 5 places wrong there. Remember the system we use for how we accurately score this is based on points. So whether I had a team finishing 5 places better or 5 places worse than they actually did, it gets me 5 points. And you add all those points up together to get a score. So I got 5 points on the board already. Fulham finished 10th. I had them finishing 19th. That is bad. That is 9 places out. I can tell you already, that's my biggest gap in prediction to actual finish of this whole leaderboard. So Fulham have smashed it, and they could have done even better if they hadn't had that Mitrovic ban, I think. Really good from them to avoid relegation and actually almost, really, not be far off Europe. And then Leeds, I was only 1 place out, as we said. I didn't fancy them this year. I looked at their defence and I just thought, I don't think it's a Premier League defence. And I think they've had issues as well. They've had injuries and things. They started the season well with Rodrigo scoring goals, but then Marsh left. And again, having Big Sam in at the end, I think his sort of reputation as a survivalist is now gone. I don't think he's that guy anymore. And I think he didn't help himself when he came in and did a press conference and said he's as good as Pep Guardiola as a manager. I think Pep would keep him up, to be honest. Anyway, Leeds are down. All the best to them. I only got 1 point for that, though, because I was 1 point off. So that's the relegation spot. Let's move on. 17th. I had Wolves finishing 17th. It was actually Everton. I was 4 places out. Wolves finished 13th. Although I was right about Wolves being in the conversation for relegation, wasn't I? Because until Lopetegui came in, they were very much looking like they could go down. And obviously, you can't really allow for managerial changes. If you're predicting a team that's going to go down at the start of the season, and they do actually start to look like they're going to go down, the chances are they will change the manager, and the chances are their fortunes will then change. So that's kind of what happened with Wolves. So I'm not actually devastated with getting 4 points for that one and being 4 places out, because Wolves did have the sort of season I thought they would. And there's rumours that Lopetegui could leave now because he's not been given the sort of transfer kitty that he'd hoped for. And so maybe they'll have a problem next year if he leaves. I don't know. Brentford, I had finishing 16th. Of course, that was where Forest finished. I was 7 places out. Again, a really poor prediction on that one. Brentford have done ever so well when you consider they had that Ivan Toney potential suspension riding over them all season, which we now obviously know has been activated and he's going to miss a lot of next season. But they've just been so good, Brentford. Again, if you look at their team, they're greater than the sum of their parts. The job that the owners and Frank have done there never ceases to amaze me. You know, having them finish 16th was me saying I definitely don't think they're going to go down, but I think they'd have a struggling year. They finished 9th, guys. They, again, were really close to European football. So kudos to Brentford. Really fantastic job. In 15th, I had Nottingham Forest. Now, I'm really happy with this one, because they finished 16th. I was 1 place out. They were 1 point off of finishing 15th, and they were a newly promoted team that I accurately predicted to stay up in almost exactly the right spot. So fair play. They spent loads of money, didn't they? And it could have easily gone wrong for Forest. But I think, again, they've done a really good job. And towards the end of the season, they started to really find some momentum. And yeah, if they can build from that, now they've got this squad and not go crazy in the summer, but just improve it slowly and little steps, I think they could survive again next year. So only 1 point for that one. Everton. Now, I had Everton to finish 14th. They finished 17th. They did survive. They always survive. They are the perennial Premier League team. And every single season, it seems like they survive near the end of the season. But well done to them. Massive. The atmosphere at Goodison Park looked unreal yesterday. But I was 3 places out here with Everton. I think it was a good appointment. Bringing in Dyche obviously didn't work out with Lampard. And I think, again, given a full season, they should be fine in the Prem if he gets backed and is able to bring in some players. They do need a bit of reinforcement, particularly in the attacking areas. Calvert-Lewin needs to either stay fit or get out of there, I think. Now, 13th position, I had Brighton, okay? Now, Brighton went and finished 6th. Now, I'm pretty sure when I did these predictions, I did a whole thing about Brighton, because for years I've been predicting them to go down or become close to relegation, and I'd always got it wrong because they'd always be safe in the mid-table, and I sort of wore that when I did these predictions. I said, sorry to Brighton, I'm going to back you this year. I'm going to have you nowhere near the relegation spot. I'm going to have you finishing 13th. And I felt like the Brighton fans were really going to be friends with me after that one. I'm still 7 places out because they've finished 6th. And I don't care who you are. You could be the biggest Brighton fan. You could be a massive seagull. I don't think you predicted Brighton to get European football. And if you did, fair play. But they have absolutely smashed it this year across Potter and De Zerbi's managerial, reign. They just uncover these gems constantly, and when they lose them, like they might lose McAllister, Caicedo this summer, they've already got new ones lined up. They might already be at the club, we just haven't heard of them yet, or they'll buy some more. They spend money so well. The bang for their buck, the pound for pound performance from Brighton is always sensational. So I cannot say enough good things about them, and I'm going to have to predict them a lot higher than 13th next year. That's picked me up 7 points, which is not ideal. Moving into 12th, I had Southampton to finish 12th. They finished dead bottom. They were the first team to be relegated. They ended up being relegated by 11 points. 25 points is a really poor return. I know I've talked about them already in the relegation conversation. I do think they've got a good young squad that if they can keep together, they'll be looking good in the future. But I do expect a few players, as always is, to be picked out of them. Maybe West Ham might pick up the likes of Lavia. Maybe we could also go for the likes of Barnes from Leicester. Maybe Tielemans on a free transfer. There's some good players out there. But when it comes to Saints, bad prediction, 8 places wrong. My second worst of the season. That's picked me up 8 points, which is not ideal. And yeah, Southampton back in the Championship. Hate to see it. Moving on, though, to 11th position, Crystal Palace. The first one, I got exactly right. I fancied them to be mid-table. I didn't think Vieira would move on and Hodgson would come back, but the squad's got them exactly where I thought the squad would get them, even with a lot of Zaha injury issues. So well done to Palace. Very safe. And well done to Roy, by the way, showing quality like a fine wine. Moving into the top half now. Going from a good one to a bad one. I had Leicester to finish 10th. I don't know if many people would have predicted Leicester to go down. However, thinking back to it, they did have a really bad summer window, didn't they? They didn't back Brendan Rodgers. They basically bought no one. Maybe the writing was on the wall with that transfer market performance. I've had them 10th. They finished 18th. They've gone down on the final day. That's 8 points. It's my second joint worst, along with Southampton in terms of distance from where they actually finished and where I predicted them. Not ideal. I don't like to see Leicester go down. I hope to see them back in the Premier League, but it's not always that simple. Now in 9th, I had my boys West Ham. I thought this was a fairly conservative prediction, considering we had a really good year last year and finishing 7th and getting in the Conference League. We're clearly not a bad side because we're in the Conference League final, but I do think a combination of playing on multiple fronts with the Conference League, lots of games, mixed with maybe spending a lot of money in the summer, but not bringing in a lot of pace. I think Maxwell Cornet was the only player we really brought in with any pace. and our fullbacks were looking slower with likes of Soufal and Cresswell, and obviously Cornets missed a lot of football. So I think it took us a bit of time to adjust to that. And in the end, people like Antonio and Bowen have stepped up when we need them. Obviously, Rice has been fantastic. We're going to lose him almost certainly. One player that's really kicked on in the last few months after a slow start is Paquetá. Lucas Paquetá, looking like the player that we thought he was, looking like the player that he is for Brazil, for West Ham right now. I'm hoping for a big Conference League final performance. But I had him finishing 9th. We finished 14th in the end. We could have easily squeezed up to 12th maybe, but I was still going to be a few places out on this one, so I'm going to have to wear that. That's 5 more points added to my tally there. Not ideal. Remember, we want as little points as possible in this sort of predictions game. In 8th position, I had Newcastle, and I knew they were going to be safe. Obviously, let's remember, when Eddie Howe came in last season, they were in relegation threatened, territory. What a job he's done, because 8th was a massive under prediction. They ended up finishing 4th. They've got Champions League football back on Tyneside. That is decent. And listen, there's a lot of controversy with the way that Newcastle have got their money, but I think all football fans can probably appreciate the way they've spent it. They've made good purchases. They haven't broken the bank and bought people like beyond their sort of level. They've slowly improved. Like Trippier was the first one, and then they've added. But the thing that Eddie Howe has done so well is he's improved players that were already there. You look at the performances he's got out of Joe Linton, Almiron. It's just sensational. Brought in people like, obviously Guimaraes is massive, but then even like Dan Burn, the job he's done. Botman didn't get picked for the World Cup. Looks like a world beater for Newcastle. Nick Pope, what a purchase that was. So I really like the way they've gone about their business. I'm really happy to see Newcastle in the Champions League. I think the fans deserve it. The only bad thing about it is I've picked up another 4 points because I only had them finishing 8th. In 7th, I had Villa. I got this one bang right. It's one of only 2 completely right predictions I got in the whole 20-team Premier League, although I had quite a few that were only 1 place out. Villa, now obviously they started the season with Gerrard, and I didn't know what was going to happen there. They started really poorly. Emery's sorted it out massively, but the squad has got where I thought the squad would get. Looking back on the season, I actually think they might have actually overperformed a little bit because there's other teams that are much better than we thought they were going to be. For example, Brighton. But I'm happy with the prediction. But the job Emery's done is sensational if you actually think about where they were when he took over. But and then people like Diego Carlos, they brought in a centre-half, barely kicked a ball. So I do think that they've had to deal with a few things this year, Villa. But yeah, really happy with that one. I picked up no points because I got it exactly right. In 6th position, I had United, Man United. I had them missing out on Champions League football, which obviously was wrong. They've ended up finishing 3rd. Another 3 points picked up here. Actually, a decent season. Some people saying United had a better season than Arsenal because they've won a League Cup. They could win an FA Cup. They're in the Champions League, same thing that Arsenal are in. I don't know if I agree with that narrative. I think Arsenal's sort of return to the elite of the Premier League is a massive deal for them, whereas United have always kind of been there or thereabouts, even in their darker days. But I do think Ten Hag's done a great job, especially if you consider the way the season started. Remember that beatdown they took from Brentford early on. It was embarrassing. The big defeat to Liverpool as well. Bit of a concern there. They've had the ability to collapse in certain games, but generally speaking, Casemiro's made a massive difference. Ten Hag's got Rashford playing his best football. Bruno looks better now Ronaldo's moved on. He's had to deal with the whole Ronaldo drama, which seems like ages ago, but it was this season. Let's not forget that. So yeah, United have done well. 3 places out with that one. But that prediction's not as bad as my next one. I had Chelsea finishing 5th, which I thought was quite brave. Having Chelsea outside the top 4. I reckon there's a lot of people that had them inside the top 4. But no, they finished 12th. Unbelievably, 7 places worse than I thought a fairly conservative 5th place prediction. A terrible season. We could make a whole video about it. Just disastrous from every single area. Like, the amount of money they spent is embarrassing. I honestly believe if they'd bought no players in January, they wouldn't be any worse than they are now. Now, that's not to say that some of these players aren't going to go on to be great. Enzo Fernandez, for example, could be a world beater once that team gets sorted. But it's so much money. When you spend that much money, they have to be a world beater. And then when they are a world beater, you don't even give them credit because you say, well, they cost me 100+ million. So, of course, they're a world beater. So I just don't ever agree with those sorts of transfer policies. And I think that made it really hard for Chelsea to succeed. Now, whilst I have not done well here in my prediction, obviously this is pre-Todd Bowley's money being spent, okay? But what I will say is this. I didn't give them the best transfer window. When everyone in the comments had an opinion about this on my transfer window reaction video, I said, no, I think Arsenal have had a better window than Chelsea. And I think I've got some concerns about Chelsea's window because they bought too many players. But everyone in the comments was saying, no, they've bought so many players. And it seems to be people correlate how much you spend and how much you do with good business. Sometimes the best window could just be not doing anything if you're happy with your squad. So I did kind of have fear from January onwards for Chelsea, even with that expenditure. But I mean, no one predicted them finishing 12th, so I've got to wear that one. Another big point earner in not a good way for me. Moving into the top 4 then. Yes, I did have Arsenal finishing top 4. Now, you can look at this and say, oh, but Spen, they nearly won the league. They finished second. But again, please go back to my predictions video. You will see people mug me off for putting Arsenal in the top 4. Yes, I know that seems crazy now with the context we now have. But at the start of the season, people told me I was an idiot for putting Arsenal in the top 4. They weren't going to make it. Well, they've done 2 better than 4th. They've finished second. So well done to Arteta. Well done to the Arsenal boys. There wasn't many league winners in that side. I know they brought in Jesus and Zinchenko, which helped a lot, clearly, from City. But they needed a season like this for me. If they're going to be title winners in the future, which I think they could be if anyone could take on City, with a few additions, they just don't have the depth that the City have ultimately. But if they're going to be, challenging the future, they needed a season like this. They needed to learn from that collapse, that getting so close but ultimately come up short. The 2 big games versus City, how important were they? These are the sort of things they're going to have to conquer if they can ever win a league in the future or again. But well done to Arsenal, though. Still a very good season, and I still think better than United's season, unless United win the FA Cup. In third position, I had Spurs. Now, obviously, they've ended up finishing 8th. They've missed out on European football completely. And I would have loved to have predicted Spurs to finish outside European spaces, but I had them finishing 3rd based on the Conte factor. This is twice now we have seen managers come into Spurs that we just know guarantee you trophies. Mourinho and Conte have failed at both clubs. What does that tell you? What does Conte's meltdown tell you? It is poisoned. That club is not right, and it comes from the top. There is dry rot that needs to be pulled out. Japanese knotweed everywhere. It's a problem, okay? So what's going to happen in the future for Spurs, I don't know. But that's why I had them finishing 3rd. I believed in the Conte factor. And once again, Chelsea have cancelled out the managerial guarantee of success. So yeah, more points for me on that one, unfortunately. So moving into the top 2 then, I had City, believe it or not, finishing 2nd. I was 1 place out with that. Obviously, they won the league. I think anyone was going to predict them at either top or 2nd, probably. I just didn't think they were necessarily going to win 3 in a row because not many teams have done it. Only Man United have done it before, and City have now got a chance to win 4 in a row next year, which has never been done before in the Premier League. I just thought something was going to come up against them. I thought maybe they were going to take their eye off the prize and concentrate on Champions League. The reality is there's a treble still to play for because they could win the FA Cup and the Champions League in the next few weeks, which would make them potentially the best Premier League team of all time. I obviously had Liverpool finishing top, and we'll talk about them in a minute, but them not doing as well and other teams not doing as well as they should have is what gave City the chance. Because if you actually look at the amount of points City won the league with, 89, I mean, they've won the league with over 100 points in the past. So it's actually not that good a season from City's standards that they've set recently. Just everyone else was off it. They weren't. It was more of a typical Premier League season. 89 points is normally a fairly good guarantee of success. You'll see many teams win the league with less points. But more recently, the City-Liverpool battle has meant you need to get close to 100 points to win. For example, #United won their 38-game season with 98 points this season. We had a 21-game win streak, yes, in the lower level, but way better season in terms of relativity to your opponents in the league than what City had this year. But still, amazing. The job Pep's done is great. He was even able to give Zinchenko and Jesus to the closest rivals they had this year and still beat them in their own game. So can't say enough good things. Of course, Haaland is a huge factor there. Would they have won the league without him? I think they still could have, potentially. But what a buy. He's come in and just destroyed every record ever. Top goal scorer, most goals ever scored in the Premier League season. He missed a few games as well. They say it's in a 38-game season, but I think it was about a 35-game season for him, which is just madness. Also, I didn't really mention it before, but shout out to Harry Kane because he also had a ridiculous season in a bad team. And I think he would have won the Golden Boot if Haaland wasn't here. He would have won the Golden Boot in most other years in a 38-game season with the amount of goals he scored this year. Plus 30 goals is a joke by any standards. But Haaland is a freak of nature. He's not human. He's a robot sent back in time to score goals. So well done to City, though. Liverpool, what can I say about Liverpool? I had them finishing top. They finished 5th outside the top 4. What's gone wrong here? Well, I know that Trent had a disastrous start to the season defensively. The defence in general looked a lot weaker. I don't just put that at Trent's feet. I think that's a combination of Van Dijk's powers waning a little bit, Fabinho not being the same solid man he is in the middle, the midfield in general, which I made a video about before, not having the same utility it did in the Henderson, Wijnaldum, Fabinho era. Harvey Elliott coming in and affecting the way Salah plays on that side as a left footer. I think these have all had various sort of knockdown effects on the Liverpool team. And only more recently have we seen their form pick up since they started using Trent in the same way that, John Stones has been playing for Man City recently as this right back comes centre mid in possession. And that could be an exciting glimpse as to what they do in the future. We know Liverpool are going to strengthen in the middle. They could get McAllister from Brighton, many other players they're looking at. But it was a poor year by their standards. Their squad should be doing better, even without Mane. quality they've got there with Gakpo coming in, Jota, Diaz has missed a lot of football, but still, Nunez as well. That team should be in the top 4. But it's going to be hard. Like, you look at the top 4 this year: City, Arsenal, United, Newcastle. None of them are going to want to come out easy next year. But Chelsea and Liverpool are going to be going hard to get back in there. So who's going to miss out next year? It's going to be tough. Liverpool might not get back in. They're in Europa League next year as well, which could affect their ability to attract players this summer. So another 4 points picked up for me there. So let's see how many points that is in total. Reminder of my previous years. You can see on the screen now my previous scores. My best ever score is 44 points. That was a very strong year, only getting 44 points. My worst ever year, 82 points. Almost twice as bad as my best ever year at 44. I can exclusively reveal to you now my performance for the 2022-2023 season is a record breaker, as I promised. Officially my worst ever year. I know. I'm actually surprised because I didn't feel like it was that bad. There isn't one. Do you remember that year I got Sheffield United like 14 places wrong or something? There was no like huge more than 10 places wrong prediction, but there was a couple of 8s and 7s and 9s that really hurt me. And only 2 zeros in there. 3 predictions that were 1 place out, but there was a lot of sort of 4s and 5s as well, and it's really hurted me. 84 points. It's 2 worse than my worst ever year of 82 points. It's 40 points worse than my best ever year. The only good thing about this is we've hopefully set an absolute bottom low that I'll never go lower than again. And who am I blaming for this? I'm obviously blaming myself because I've done the predictions. But what are the ones I really got wrong? Chelsea. I mean, everyone's going to pick up a lot of points there. Leicester. Could I have predicted them nearer the relegation zone? Probably. I've got to wear that one. Southampton. That's on me, I think. Brentford. Maybe I should have backed them a bit more. Brighton. I don't know if many people would have had Brighton in top 6. So I think Brighton and Chelsea are kind of outliers. I think a lot of people are going to struggle with them this year in the predictions. And then Fulham. I don't know if many people have had Fulham that high. So they're the 3 really that I look at and I think, don't know what I could have done really. Chelsea, Brighton and Fulham. They would have surprised a lot of people. But I will have to wear Brentford. I will have to wear getting Leicester and Southampton quite badly wrong as well. And it is what it is. Not a great season, guys. Let me know in the comments below how you got on and how you've seen my season. Before we finish, though, as promised, I want to award 2 awards. I want to award a manager of the season and I want to award a team of the season. And I'm giving my manager of the season. It was a 2-man shortlist. I'm not going to lie. It was between Eddie Howe and Unai Emery. Okay? I'm not going to talk about all the other managers. They're the 2 I chose. Eddie Howe has coached his team to be better. Yes, he's had money. I think they spent a couple $100 million, but everyone spends that these days. West Ham spent a couple $100 million. Chelsea spent double that and finished bottom half. That's not a lot of money these days. And it's not a lot of money in comparison to what they could theoretically have spent, although there is financial fair play issues to be looked at there with Newcastle, which is why they haven't gone crazy. But I'm glad they haven't. They've done everything right. If you were to tell the Newcastle owners you're going to go from relegation threatened to Champions League in like a year and you're not going to have to spend the sort of money Chelsea are spending, you couldn't write a better script. And Eddie Howe is probably the most important thing they've done since they came into that club, bringing him in. Such a good job. Got probably mid-table or maybe Europa League quality players playing Champions League qualification football. And that's the sign of a good coach. However, I'm also looking at Unai Emery because even though Villa finished exactly where I thought they were going to finish, he inherited a Villa side that was underperforming, low on confidence and in the conversation to potentially go down. And he just went, good evening. And he took them straight back to where I thought they should be. He's done so well. He's been one of the best managers and the best teams in the league since he took over. Only a handful of teams have got more points than what Aston Villa have done. Big scalps, big performances, made them very hard to beat, got the best out of players. So I'm very impressed by that. And there is a bit of a narrative in there after the Arsenal situation, and he's kind of come back and proved himself in the Premier League. So I'm quite happy with that. And you know what? I actually can't choose between the 2. I think you can make a case for both of them. So I'm going to say joint winners this year, Howe and Emery. Well done, lads. As for team of the season, the way I'm doing this, right, obviously I have my own subjective thinking, but I'm also looking at my predictions. I'm just looking at the people that finished way higher than I thought they were. So rather than making this like an overall just football perspective, this is specifically from my perspective. Who did I think was going to be like this, and they've actually been this good up here, and therefore impressed me and delivered more than I thought they could? So the teams that finished way higher than I thought they were going to do is Fulham, who finished 9 better than I thought they were going to do, 10th instead of 19th. Brentford, who finished 7 better than I thought they were going to do, 9th instead of 16th. And Brighton, who finished 7 better than I thought they were going to do, 6th instead of 13th. And out of those teams, I've decided to give it to Brighton, because they have battled with the big boys. They have taken a European spot, a Europa League spot no less, away from the likes of Tottenham and Chelsea and all the other teams that are trying to get it. They have bought so well. They've never spent silly money. They've made players that looked not amazing better, the likes of Danny Welbeck, who's had a great season. They cope with losing players constantly. They lost Cucurella at the start of the year. I mean, it looks like that was a great bit of business because he's not been good for Chelsea. And they've got Estupiñán in at left back, who's been a joke. It's just like they always have a player lined up to come in. And if they lose McAllister and if they lose Caicedo, they'll have someone else. Pascal Gross, he's played up front, scored loads of goals. He's played in the middle. He's played right back. It's just a joke. Obviously, De Zerbi's a big part of that. But I really think the people behind the scenes at Brighton are what's making it tick. And I can't say enough good things about them. So they're my team of the season. Well done to Brighton. Hopefully they have a great run in Europe next year. I think they'll be able to attract better players now as a result. But I don't want them to change the way they do things. I love the way they do things. And I think every club can learn from them. But what's great about Brighton is the big teams will never copy them. Because to play Moneyball is essentially what they're doing. You have to be prepared to take risks with your recruitment. And you have to be prepared to not appease a certain kind of fan base that you might have if you're a big club in terms of pressure and getting big names. You have to be happy to innovate. And big clubs traditionally are the last to innovate. So the only teams, we've seen Spurs are thinking about taking up a Brighton model of recruitment, and they could probably get away with it because they haven't been performing. And yes, they consider themselves part of the big six and they've got a great stadium and stuff, but reality is that they're not actually in the top tier of teams in the Premier League. So a move to a Brighton model could actually help Spurs, and the fans might even take it, especially if Kane leaves this summer, which I think he should. But as for the others, the Liverpools, the Man United, the Arsenals, the Cities, we'll never see them go down a Brighton route. And that's what's good about Brighton. Keep doing what you're doing and you can keep taking those spots off the big boys. That's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to TST tomorrow, America, with #United. And we're trying to win $1 million. But we have teams like West Ham, Dortmund, Wrexham, Wolves, and many, many others standing in our way. Get over to the #United channel to stay tuned. You can see all the games live for free, streamed on there, all the highlights behind the scenes from our America trip. Taking a load of people out there, and when we come back, we'll hopefully be $1 million richer. Drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe for more. Until next time, don't go changing.